Hey, what's up, my homies? It is January 2nd, and Nikki, I just watched your video, your most recent video. I actually watched it again. Dan, I watched your video, which was the response to my, excuse me, verbosity, and so I thought I would make a response, primarily, Nikki, to your video, but of course this is going to be all over the board. Nikki, you were talking about Dan's hiking in the woods and asked if he had read To Build a Fire. Yeah, I've read that, and that kind of nihilistic and depressing. And if you are suggesting that that is Dan's fate, Dan, don't build any fires underneath trees. Got it? Okay. Dan, I think your hiking is great. I love hiking in the snow, and I do it a lot around here. Not quite mountain hiking, not like where you're at with the very variable conditions between rain and snow. Yeah, I would, and I think I've already said it, but I think that getting rid of the cotton shirt, and getting a wool sweater, and even a wool hat, I think would make a difference in keeping your head warm. So that's my suggestion. Wool socks would be good too. Nikki, you asked about Anina and her stay. No, the Rotary program is the same nationally, and that is it's a year-long program. And the design is that each student will arrive, most of them will arrive sometime in August, although occasionally there are a few countries like New Zealand and South Africa where they'll actually come in December and then leave in December, or come in January and leave in December. But typically, most students will arrive in August and they'll stay until the following July. So we were Anina's first host family, and the design is that they'll have 3 host families of roughly 3.5 months apiece. And then there's an optional 2-week trip where they'll go down to Disney World and then up the East Coast through DC, Philadelphia, New York, etc., etc. I honestly think it would be far more interesting if they went to Glacier and they went to the Grand Canyon, and then maybe Ellensburg. So, but we are obviously a biased country, and we think that the East Coast is the greatest. And maybe in terms of cities, I would argue that Seattle's pretty cool, San Francisco's pretty cool, Portland's cool, and just all the great outdoors is way cool. Anyway, so Anina lived with us until the first week of December, and then she moved in with a family named Oscar and Amy Uribe. Now, the great thing about the Uribes is that Oscar's from Mexico, and he's actually a pretty good friend of mine. I met him first swimming, and Oscar was the principal of the Catholic high school here in town, and then now this year is the principal of it's a school in Rochester. So he commutes. His wife Amy teaches Spanish at Winona State, and they have 2 children, Max and Issa, 11 and 9 or 10 and 8, right in there somewhere. Anyway, and so Anina moved in with them, and the thing I like about it is that I really think that they are a very traditional, or not traditional, they are a very common American family where you have one parent who is Latino and grew up outside of this country, and then another parent who is not, and but they have a Spanish-speaking household. So the kids speak Spanish, and even though they speak English as well, it's a bilingual household, Spanish and English. The great thing about that is that Nina, even though she studied Spanish, her Spanish is not very good, certainly not compared to her English. So I just think it's really cool that she's living with them. So she'll be with them for 3.5 months and then on to the third family. But Oscar and Amy did have a trip planned to Sayulito, which Dan is actually not too far away from Puerto Vallarta. I think it's north. Anyway, look up Sayulito. And so for that week, right around Christmas, Anina came back and lived with us again. I mean, she could have gone with them. Exchange students have done that before, but they would have to get a special visa to leave the country, come back, and it's complicated, but it's not impossible. So we got Anina over Christmas, which was kind of fun. And then we also, even though Oscar and Amy got back on the 28th, we threw a big New Year's Eve party, and that was pretty cool. We had, I think, 20 people. We served a beef tenderloin, and I cooked up a venison roast, as well as some bratwurst and some chicken. And we sang and danced and played games. We played this really cool game where you have this little pad or booklet with 8 pages on it, and you have a dry erase marker. And when you start the game, we had 8 people playing, every person gets a word. And you look at your word, and then you sketch that thing, whatever it is. For example, somebody got diaper. I got steamboat. Somebody else got orbit. So you had to sketch these things, right? And so you sketch your word, and then you turn the page and you pass it to the next person. Now they look at your sketch, and then they write what they think it is. Then they pass it to the next person, and they look at the word that the last person wrote, and then they sketch it. And then they pass it to the next person, the person looks at the sketch and writes the word, so on and so forth. So essentially you have 4 iterations of sketch word, 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 before it ends up back to you again. And then you show everybody the evolution of what you started with and what you finished with. And it was especially fun with international, with 2 Brazilians and a Spaniard. I say 2 Brazilians and a Spaniard because there was a woman who was a host mom of another Brazilian up in Minneapolis. I love that. I love saying that I'm going to go get a Brazilian. People misunderstand me completely. Anyway, so that host mom comes to Winona every year for New Year's Eve. So she came down, and we actually had Juliana as well. And then Andrea, who is the student from Madrid, who's living here in town, came over as well. So and then of course Oscar is from Mexico, and then we had a group of others as well. So it was a lot of fun, and we all made it till midnight, and then there's a tradition in Mexico, and they do the same thing in Brazil, the same thing in Spain, where the last 12 seconds as you're counting down to the new year, or the first 12 seconds, if you have a clock that bongs 12 times, you have to eat 1 grape for each second and then make a wish. And so we did that, and that was a lot of fun. Get off the counter. That was Duncan. I can't ever get him off the counter. So, not Duncan. He's in Arizona. So that was pretty cool. We really enjoyed New Year's Eve. Seahawks. Obviously they won, and they don't play again. Are you guys going to go see any other games? Any of the playoff games? So I fully support you if you do. I did watch. Did I watch that? No, because they didn't broadcast it in this area, but I followed it and I watched the highlights. So I did look for you and Mike, but I didn't see you guys.